This is the Quest, a 72-foot, 80-ton, 60-year-old fishing trawler. She worked hard for many years on the sea off the coast of New Jersey, until during a storm, she broke loose from her moorings and drifted out to sea. After drifting for several days, a fisherman luckily towed her back to the harbor, where she sank shortly thereafter in 50 feet of water. At a cost of $25,000, she was raised 6 years later and used as a ghost ship during the bicentennial celebration in Philadelphia. A year later, she had to be destroyed or moved. And here is where our story begins. Mr. and Mrs. King have owned this lake near Myerstown, Pennsylvania for many years. They have made this picturesque spot a haven for summer recreation and a mecca for divers who come from New York, Baltimore, Washington, and Philadelphia almost year-round. Nathan King used to be a writer for Hollywood films and television shows until the pressure became too great. Mrs. King met her husband during her acting career. She, too, has been very instrumental in the development of the lake. They built this modest home high on a hill overlooking this scenic man-made lake. It was here, while looking at the lake one evening, they decided to buy an old fishing trawler named the Quest and sink her in the middle of their lake. Mr. King, why did you buy the Quest?
I bought it for the primary purpose of teaching the scuba divers the rudiments of wreck diving without current and without darkness. They would have light. They would be, in other words, it would be a safer condition to learn.
How long did it take to bring the trawler up here?
Well, it's 76 miles, and approximately about 3 days.
3 days became more than a week. Many of the direct roads had to be bypassed because of low bridges, electrical wires, and other obstacles. Sometimes the Quest land crossing had traffic backed up for several miles. The weather didn't help either. But after many days of struggle, she neared her final resting place, the bottom of a lake near a sleepy little town in Pennsylvania. Many people, including neighbors, television and newspaper reporters, came to see this unusual event, the sinking of an ocean-going vessel in a small man-made lake in the middle of nowhere. A rigging company from Philadelphia had the unusual task of butting both halves of the 72-foot trawler back together again, launching her into the water from a miniature shipyard, floating her carefully to the middle of the lake, sinking her, and keeping their fingers crossed that it would all work as planned. The operation is under the direction of Charlie Young, who has never done a job like this before, but who is confident anyway that it will work. Among the many onlookers, we found Clyde Henry, a former mate of the Quest who lives in nearby Lebanon. Mr. Henry, how did you get to know about the Quest?
Well, I have a boat in Ottens Harbor, Wildwood, New Jersey, and it was tied about a half a block from where I had my boat tied. And, of course, that's how I got to know the Quest.
What do you think of her now?
Well, it sure looks different cut in half like that.
You worked on the Quest, didn't you?
We was going out along with the crew and the captain, but the crew didn't show up, so the captain said, well, we can't go. But then we said, well, we'll act as a crew. So we took the boat and out we went fishing. We had a nice day out of it, but we worked.
Can you visualize the quest in this lake here?
Well, I think it's a nice thing. I can't believe that it came so close to where I live.
Tom McElwee, a commercial printer and experienced diver from Philadelphia, will guide the operation once the ship is in the water. Tom and his friend Jack Brown were instrumental in acquiring the quest. Nailing pieces of plywood on the 60-year-old ship was fast and furious. And, of course, you can't always expect perfection. Mr. King, after they put her back together, will the quest stay afloat long enough to get her to the middle of the lake?
Well, sure, I think that they'll do it all right. They seem to know what they're doing. I think they'll do a good job.
0 hour is fast approaching. Divers will check the depth of the water near shore to make sure the quest will float once she's in the water. Smoky Roberts, a well-known diving instructor and underwater cinematographer, boards the rejoined trawler for an overall look. Smoky, who operates Smoky's Divers Den in Lancaster, has not only checked out hundreds of divers here, but was also one of the first instructors to bring divers to this area. Sparks ignite the bone-dry wood as last-minute welding almost starts a fire. But pails of water quickly brought into action avoid a big disaster. Luckily, Smoky is still on board to quench the fire on the inside. Several days later, as the ship is almost ready to be launched, preparations are being made to make this a very memorable event, including a pirate's flag, flowers, and, of course, champagne. Smoky and his assistant will photograph the historic launching from water level. The suspense is building. And then, the final moment. Mrs. King, with a cup full of champagne, starts a successful launch. After having rested at the bottom of the ocean for 6 years, retained as a landlocked ghost ship, cut in half, hauled over half the state, and nailed back together again, it seems very gratifying to see the quest once more afloat. All that is left is to float her to the middle of the lake for the final sinking. This optimism was short-lived, however. After exactly 5 minutes afloat, the quest, true to tradition, once more began to sink, and again in the wrong place. She's sinking in about 20 feet of water. And except for the noise of escaping air, silence takes hold of everyone. And some are afraid to look. As Tom McElwee and Smoky attempt to secure a line around the ship, newspaper, television, and radio reporters had a field day, and we quote from some of their stories. Quest continues as ghost ship goes under in wrong place. King's hopes sink with the ship. The Quest defied all human efforts to tame her. The ship's sinking stirs the water and bottom dirt, making the visibility almost zero, and securing the cable becomes much more difficult. While Smoky and Tom work on the underwater cable, other divers are busy inspecting the Quest for new damage and for clues on what to do next. Eerie and spooky are the words as strange gurgling and creepy noises sound from within the settling ship. It takes almost an hour to secure the very important cable around the ship. Finally, the divers return to report to the rigger, Charlie Young. Jack Brown, Charlie Young, and Tom McElwee, still shaken by the day's events, reckon that the crane isn't sufficiently powerful to hoist the 80-ton vessel from the water, and another method will have to be found. Meanwhile, Mr. King is slowly losing his cool. We ask him what advice he has for the rigger.
I do have a few suggestions. This is a rather large ship, but if we can get it up again, I know what I would like to do with it.
Does Mr. King get excited very quickly?
Every day is the 4th of July.
The Quest, meanwhile, really doesn't give a hoot. And as she lies peacefully near the edge of the lake, other inhabitants come to greet her. Weeks later, after a long time of planning, there is new activity at the lake. An ingenious plan has been worked out to lift the Quest out of the water, not by brute force, but gently on large tanks of air. Charlie Young, who never says die, has a long list of credits doing the impossible. He secured several old gasoline tanks with which he hopes to outfox the old Quest and tamely float her back to the surface. Several pumps will be brought into action to pump water and later air into the huge tanks when ready. The Quest lies patiently, awaiting a new attack by man to make her float again. And then, with the sounds of machines and voices, the attack begins, and a gigantic 20,000-gallon tank swings into position. Filling them with water is a difficult process. As the water shifts its weight, the tank submerges unevenly. It is almost like doing a high-wire balancing act. As the work proceeds, the familiar sidewalk engineers have a field day. One remarks, "It was easier going to the moon." But Charlie Young, who, as he says, has done more difficult jobs, is full of confidence. The divers, who have already been in the water a long time, prepare to secure a chain around the tanks, which will then be hitched up to the Quest. The whole operation takes hours, but as all are willing to admit, better safe now than sorry later. The divers almost resembled a team of surgeons performing a delicate operation. One cable is finally attached, and the other is nearly there, after which Tom McElwee and Smoky will do the underwater connection. As evening fast approaches, everyone anticipates tomorrow, when the Quest will rise again. We hope. Early the next morning, steel cables are lowered so Smoky and Tom can bind the tanks to the Quest. Since you can't talk underwater, something land dwellers don't often think about, it's always more difficult to do efficient teamwork. But this morning, everything goes smoothly. And soon, the old ship, for the second time in her existence, will surface again, maybe unwillingly. Topside, everything is ready. Below, the divers shut the valves so that water can be pumped from the tanks, which, when replaced with air, will float the 80-ton trawler from the bottom. At the same time, additional pumps force water from within the ship. The suspense is enormous. And then, there she blows. She's surfacing. Well, so far, only half the ship is above water. But hopefully, after some minor adjustments, she should pop up like a cork. And in case this miracle falters, additional lifting power is brought in. It's really happening. Slowly but surely, she's floating. A few of the divers have already boarded and are calling for airbags to supplement the lift. Pumps are humming at high speed, and everyone works fast and furiously to keep the 72-foot vessel afloat long enough to guide her to the middle of the lake so that the old girl doesn't sink again prematurely. Smoky, sentimental as he is, brought her some flowers, which had gotten lost during the ill-fated launching. The next step is to fix the mast back on the ship, skull and crossbones and all. And then, bon voyage for the 100-yard journey for the final sinking. The third in the Quest's 60-year lifespan. Now, without fanfare, without a captain, and without a crew, the once proud seagoing trawler embarks for her freshwater grave. Going the short distance across is smooth and uneventful, and airplanes photograph the unusual scene from above. At last, after many weeks, the Eagle has landed. The Quest has made the 100-yard voyage afloat to the designated spot in the middle of the lake. What will happen to those ocean barnacles she acquired during her 6 years at the sea's bottom? No one knows. Will they continue to grow in fresh water? All that remains for the divers to do is to open the air valves on the giant tanks. Slowly, peacefully, in a last farewell, she will slip under gracefully. The moment is near, and lo and behold, she's sinking. She's going down quietly. Nevertheless, somebody better cut that last line before float pumps and divers disappear with her. Well, saved by the night. After only a few last gasps, the old lady reaches her final destination. For Charlie Young, it was a great victory. He said he could do it, and in a roundabout way, he did. As for the divers, well, they'd gotten more than they had bargained for. Smoky, Tom, and all the others deserve a lot of credit. As for Mr. King, all's well that ends well, as he, Tom, and Smoky have some sort of a contest, and we wouldn't dare declare a winner. The Quest, with only her mast protruding, is finally at peace, and eagerly awaiting visits from new and experienced divers to be instrumental in teaching diving safety in this beautiful man-made lake.